You want to get your Bibles out, turn to Ecclesiastes. That's where we'll be studying from, Ecclesiastes chapter 1 first, and then we'll move into chapter 2. Good to be back with you tonight. Good to have the encouragement of people trying new things tonight. Had Bart up here singing and Wallace leading the opening prayer. Appreciate those men for being willing to step out and do that. You both did a great job. Thank you all for doing that. So we've been studying in Ecclesiastes, and to prepare us for our study tonight, I want you to just think about a time when something really good happened in your life, and you were really looking forward to that thing, whatever it was. Maybe it was graduating high school, graduating college, maybe it was getting a dream job, maybe it was getting to marry the spouse, the woman, the man of your dreams, whatever that thing was. Just think about that moment, and the anticipation and the excitement surrounding that moment, and how you walked through that moment, and it seemed maybe surreal to you that this was actually happening at that moment. But then it passed. It didn't stay. The joy and everything, it's probably still great, right? Maybe you still love your job. Hopefully you still love that spouse, and you're still excited every day to wake up next to that spouse and really having fun together. Maybe that house is just as wonderful as it always was, but it's not ever like it was at that point, right? That point when all of a sudden you went from not having it to having it. And you experience the joy and the satisfaction of having a wife, a husband, a job, a college degree, or whatever it was. And now you'll never again really enjoy or feel that experience of not having that and going to having it. You've experienced that. You can't go back in time and go to when you haven't experienced it. Now you have experienced it. Even if you lose it, you can't get it again and it feel the same. It's going to be different every time. And it's not going to be exactly like that. Well, there's many events like this that happen in life that we're excited about, that are really good things, and then they happen, and maybe in some cases they're not as great as we hoped that they would be. Maybe that dream job isn't really that much fun. Maybe getting married is a lot more work than you thought it would be. Maybe having a baby is a lot more work than you thought it would be, or something along those lines. And you were so excited about the potential, and you had this wonderful idea and vision in your mind of what that was going to be like, and then you get there and you experience it, and you're like, oh, so that's what that's like. It's good, don't get me wrong, but I didn't really expect that, It reminds me of a song that I've heard a good bit with all the nursery rhymes going on in our house. The bear went over the mountain. You know that song, right? The bear went over the mountain. It's about a bear that went over the mountain. The bear went over the mountain. The bear went over the mountain. The bear went over the mountain. You feel the anticipation. You feel the excitement. He's going over the mountain. It's got to be a good mountain, There's got to be something up there because it said it 3 times, right? We're excited. He's going up the mountain, and the song builds your anticipation. And then it says, and all that he could see. And that phrase is like, well, that doesn't sound too good. And then it repeats that, and all that he could see. And it's like, okay, what did he see? Tell me what he could see. Was the other side of the mountain. Really? It's just this letdown, right? It's all this excitement building up, and then it's just like, oh, so it wasn't what he had hoped that it might have been. There's all this potential whenever you're on this side of the mountain. Then whenever you get up over, you can see and understand what's on the other side of the mountain and all your dreams and thoughts of what it would be. Well, it's not that, but it's the other side of the mountain. I think that's a perfect representation of what we go through over and over again in life. It's such a perfect nursery rhyme to teach our kids that that's life. That we have all these things that promise us excitement and great things, but they don't really deliver on the level that we had hoped that they would. Once we get up over that mountain, we see it's just the other side of the mountain. And Satan makes all these promises to us and makes us believe that if we can just get up over that mountain, then we'll find exactly what it is that we're looking for. but it's just the other side of the mountain. It's not what we're hoping it would be. And maybe, in life, we have wonderful things that happen to us, and it's wonderful to be on the other side of that mountain, but, it's not perfect. Life doesn't magically get easy and wonderful, and, it's not free of suffering. It's not free of doubt and shame and guilt, and all those problems still persist, and they grow as we live longer and longer and longer. And that's the nature of life. Well, as we come into this lesson in chapter 2, we see Solomon has a desire to figure out what mountain he can climb that is more than the other side of the mountain whenever he gets to the other side. That's his goal in this book. If you look at Ecclesiastes 1, and starting in verse 16, he says, I said in my heart, I have acquired great wisdom, surpassing all who were over Jerusalem before me. And my heart has had great experience of wisdom and knowledge. And I applied my heart to know wisdom and to know madness and folly. I perceive that this also is but striving after the wind. For in much wisdom is much vexation, and he who increases in knowledge increases sorrow. So start off, he says, I've acquired all of this, and I'm applying my heart to know even more, to understand more. But he starts off with this kind of warning here, that he's looking for meaning. He's trying to grasp where the successful mountains are, where he can go and he can find happiness, where he can find lasting joy. Isn't that what we all want? Well, that's what he's seeking after. And so we're like him, right? We're seeking to find something. We're applying our heart. We're applying all the wisdom and knowledge and experience in our lives to find something, whether it's a spouse or a job or a wonderful place to live and all the many wonderful blessings that this life offers. Whatever kind of satisfaction you're after, we think that's going to get it. That's going to give it to us. And that's what he is at this point. He's saying, I did that. I applied my heart. I tried to understand where something would be valuable, and it was all vanity. It was all striving after the wind. He says, in much wisdom is much vexation, and he who increases knowledge increases sorrow. They didn't give him anything. So at the very beginning of the book, he starts off with this kind of warning. In all my searching, in all my seeking, I found that it was just a frustrating thing. It was all meaningless. There's nothing. There's no mountain. There's no hill that we can cross over to the other side and see, this is where life is. Now today, we have tons of opportunities. Opportunities that people elsewhere in the world dream about. We live in America. We live in a very wealthy society. And we have opportunities, even if we're the poorest of Americans, we have opportunities that other people would just dream of. But we need to understand that Solomon had more opportunities than we have ever had in some ways. Even though he didn't have, iPhones and computers and internet and all the many things that we have. He didn't have AC. He didn't have, indoor plumbing. There's things that he didn't have that we have. That is really nice. Solomon was not only the wealthiest man in the world, even wealthier maybe than Elon Musk, but he was also the most powerful man in the world. He had the ability to make people do whatever he wanted them to do. So he had even more opportunities than we did. And here he is at the beginning saying, here's my understanding. Here's what's happened to me. I've applied my heart to know where we can go to find joy and satisfaction, and I found that it was all vanity. It was all striving after the wind, trying to catch the wind, and I came up empty-handed. So think for a second about all that Solomon could have done. He kind of lays it out in chapter 2. It says in verse 1, I said in my heart, come now, I will test you with pleasure. Enjoy yourself. Test you with pleasure. Enjoy yourself. You can do anything you want to do. You're the king of the greatest nation on earth. You have more wealth than anybody, more power than anybody. You can do anything you desire. Solomon ends up marrying 1,000 wives and having 1,000 wives and concubines. He has everything at his disposal. He can have as much fun as he wants to have. He could get drunk all day, every day for 150 years if he lived that long. He could do whatever he wanted to do. And so he tests his heart. It says, I'm testing my heart with pleasure to see if the desires in my heart can be made to find satisfaction in the things of this earth. Whatever it is that we have ever dreamed of doing, whether it's a good thing or an evil thing, whatever it is, Solomon had that opportunity at his disposal, and he seemed to have tried just about everything to see if his heart's desires could be satisfied, to see if they could be calmed down and not crave something else, to see if they could be contented. And all the pleasures that he found. Notice he says, behold, this also is vanity. Instead of laughter, it is mad, and of pleasure, what use is it? I searched with my heart how to cheer my body with wine, my heart still guiding me with wisdom, and how to lay hold on folly, till I might see what was good for the children of man to do under heaven during the few days of their life. I made great works. I built houses and planted vineyards for myself. I made myself gardens and parks and plants in them, all kinds of fruit trees. I made myself pools from which to water the forests of growing trees. I bought male and female slaves and had slaves who were born in my house. Notice he's just listing off all the many things that he's done. He had all these great works. Not only did he enjoy pleasures and do anything that he wanted to do, but he set out to accomplish great feats, to become the greatest in the world, to have the biggest buildings, the best buildings, the biggest vineyards, the best vineyards, the biggest gardens, the best gardens. He did everything that he wanted to do, and he had slave labor to help him do anything that he set his mind to accomplish, he could do. Plenty of things to be proud of and to show everybody, to see maybe there's value in accomplishing something and being successful at this and being the most successful and the greatest in the world. This is a mountain that I'm going to climb to see if there's something on the other side that's of value. You go on, you read in verse 7, I bought male and female slaves who were born in my house. I also had great possessions of herds and flocks, more than any who had been before me in Jerusalem. I also gathered for myself silver and gold and the treasure of kings and provinces. I got singers, both men and women, many concubines, the delight of the sons of man. Notice he has more than anyone before him. Talk about possessions. He had more flocks and herds than anybody. And that's security. That's financial security. To have that many livestock is to have enough to last you forever, and it's going to just produce more and more and more. It's like the biggest 401k you could possibly have, right? And so he's enjoying that. He's got silver and gold. In the days of Solomon, it said silver is so prevalent, it's like stones. Gold, he had over 400 talents of gold brought in from the land of Ophir on ships. Talent is a huge, huge amount of gold. And he had over 400 brought in. So this man had more money, more stuff than anyone had ever had on the face of the earth. What did he gain by that? What did he gain by all the pleasure, by all the success, by all the riches and all the wealth? Look at verse 9. So I became great and I surpassed all who were before me in Jerusalem. Also my wisdom remained with me. And whenever my eyes desired, I did not keep from them. Isn't that interesting? I kept my heart from no pleasure. For my heart found pleasure in all my toil. And this was my reward for all my toil. Then I considered all that my hands had done and the toil I had expended in doing it, and behold, all was vanity and a striving after wind, and there was nothing to be gained under the sun. Nothing to be gained under the sun. What did he gain in all this? He says nothing. Wasn't he satisfied by all the pleasures that he enjoyed? I mean, there's things that maybe we sit here and we daydream about as we're at work. Just, if I could just get out there and get me a really nice big boat or big camper or big RV or whatever it is. If I could just go explore and see the world. If I could just go do this, then it would just be so great. And he experienced that. There was nothing he withheld from himself. And at the end of it all, his words are, what use is it? He had all the sexual pleasure that he could possibly desire. And at the end of it all, he says, what use is it? It's as though he understands that the temporary state of the high of experiencing the joy of whatever that pleasure is, it goes away in an instant. It's not useful. It doesn't last. And once you have experienced it, it's not new anymore, and you have to go further and do more and experience more. It doesn't satisfy in the long term. So he didn't gain anything by pursuing pleasure. It didn't help him at all. But then he says about the riches and all the success and everything, all of that too was vanity. It was striving after the wind. And he says there's nothing to be gained under the sun. Nothing. Isn't that odd? How many of us are just working away to accomplish some great feat or to accomplish some great project or to be someone great or to have something great in life? Solomon just crushes our dreams, doesn't he? It's just why? So what if we could be the greatest basketball player on earth? Who cares? It's vanity. Who cares? What do you want to be? What's the greatest that you could ever possibly accomplish? It doesn't matter what it is. It's empty. Striving after the wind. But he says something that is really fascinating in this text. There is some glimmer of hope in here that he's going to hit on over and over again in the book of Ecclesiastes. Did you catch it as we were studying through this? Notice, as you read through this, he kept his heart from no pleasure. For my heart, he says, found pleasure in all my toil. And this was my reward for all my toil. That's an interesting phrase. It's an interesting idea that he says, my heart found pleasure in all my toil. His heart didn't find pleasure in all the pleasures, That's what we expect him to. It's pleasure. Of course you're going to find pleasure in that. And I'm sure there was some level of pleasure in that. But all of that was just fleeting and temporary. And I think what he's talking about, what he's searching for, is something lasting, something more meaningful, something that he can continually be in the process of enjoyment. And what he's saying is the journey is more valuable than the outcome. It's more valuable than the end. The process, as painful as it is, of building and creating, of developing skills and abilities, that process is a joyful process. It's a process that brings him much pleasure. Right now I'm coaching little girls, third and fourth grade basketball girls, and I'm just watching them and I'm learning how I don't remember how to teach someone to play basketball. I learned it at kindergarten. I play basketball from kindergarten to 11th grade. And I'm here with these third grade girls, and 5 of the 7 girls have never played before. And I'm like, okay, y'all just shoot layups. And they don't know how to shoot layups. Okay, let's play 3-on-3. They don't even know how to play 3-on-3. They're just running around like chickens with their head cut off, waving their hands in the air. Throw me the ball, I guess. I don't know what to do. And that whole learning process is really fun. I don't know how to coach either, so this is my first time coaching, their first time playing. It's a perfect fit. But the journey's the fun part. We think it's just going to be so great whenever we get to the end and we win the tournament and everything's going to be great. And I don't know if that's going to happen, but, wouldn't that be great? Yeah, I'm excited if that would have happened. That'd be wonderful. But it's wonderful now. There's joy right now in all the frustration of trying to show them things that they've never learned before, that I've never explained before. There's joy in the process. And he says, I found the most pleasure whenever I was in the process of building the thing. I found more pleasure in the process of building the thing than I found in the thing whenever the thing was built, whatever it was. And I think that we have to develop that understanding and that mindset to have a joyful life. If your labor and your work is not joyful, we have to understand that we're here to work, and we should enjoy the work that it is that we're doing. Whatever it is, find some joy in it. Maybe you're stuck in a job that you hate. Find some joy in it. Find some way to a job that you love or something that is enjoyable to you, because he says that is the thing that gave me lasting pleasure and enjoyment. And you go throughout this book, you see this over and over again. He repeats this idea. Look with me at chapter 2, verse 24. He says, there is nothing better for a person than that he should eat and drink and find enjoyment in his toil. This also I saw is from the hand of God. For apart from him, who can eat or who can have enjoyment? So here he says there's nothing better. And he's going to repeat this idea. There's nothing better. You want something better than this? I'm sorry, there's nothing better. Everything else is vanity. If you're counting on the end being great, it's just vanity. You just need to understand there's nothing better than to eat and drink and find enjoyment in your work, in your toil. Enjoy the fruits of your labor. Enjoy your labor. That's what you have in this life. Look at chapter 3, verse 12. I perceive that there is nothing better for them than to be joyful and to do good as long as they live. Also that everyone should eat and drink and take pleasure in all his toil. This is God's gift to man. Same idea. The best that we have is enjoying our toil, according to Solomon. Go to chapter 5. Look at verse 18. He says, behold, I have seen what I have seen to be good and fitting is to eat and drink and find enjoyment in all the toil with which one toils under the sun, the few days of his vain life that God has given him, for this is his lot. Everyone also to whom God has given wealth and possessions and power to enjoy them and to accept his lot and rejoice in his toil, this is the gift of God. For he will not much remember the days of his life because God keeps him occupied with joy in his heart. You see, he's just laying it out there. If you're focused on the enjoyment of the work that you have to do, if you're focused on the enjoyment of the things that God has given you, and focus on the fact that these are gifts from God. Notice how that's sprinkled throughout all of this. These are gifts from God. These are not things that you have accomplished and that you could get on your own, but these are things that God has given you. And that we need to be mindful of that and as a result be enjoying those things. You see how Solomon is bringing to mind in all of this contentment. Contentment. That's at the heart of this. Chapter 8, verse 15, similar idea. I commend joy. For man has nothing better under the sun but to eat and drink and be joyful. For this will go with him in his toil through the days of his life that God has given him under the sun. Be joyful. That's what he says. It's the best thing that you have going for you in life. That's what he has found in all of the seeking and all the going over the mountains. He says the process of hiking up that mountain is the fun part. Because there's all this excitement and joy in the end. And you just need to soak it all in and enjoy it. Well, that's Solomon's picture for us of seeking fulfillment and how we can find joy and fulfillment. But one thing that we're going to try to do as we study the book of Ecclesiastes is open up the New Testament and see what Christ reveals. Remember, in Ecclesiastes, what we find is it's all about life under the sun. And he doesn't have any perspective of any other life than life under the sun. But whenever we come into the New Testament and we read the words of Jesus, we have an understanding of life beyond this life. And what is it that we could do that would provide some kind of gain for us? That's a lasting gain. Well, Jesus tells us there will be gain for every good deed. Go to Matthew chapter 6 and look what Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount. Matthew 6. This is a repeated idea in the Sermon on the Mount, but he adds a little change as you go through. So Matthew 6, beginning in verse 1, he says, "Beware of practicing your righteousness before other people in order to be seen by them, for then you will have no reward from your Father who is in heaven." Jesus starts to bring up a reward from the Father who is in heaven. And he says, those who are practicing their righteousness to be seen by other people have no reward. Now go down to verse 3. "But when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you." You're searching for something that you can do that will give you a lasting gain, a lasting joy and satisfaction that doesn't go away, that's imperishable, that's undefiled, that's eternal. He says, when you give, don't let your left hand know what your right hand's doing. And your Father, who sees in secret, will reward you. You go forward, you see in verse 6, when you pray, go into your room and shut the door and pray to your Father who's in secret. And your Father who sees in secret will reward you. And go over to verse 17. "But when you fast, anoint your head and wash your face, that your fasting may not be seen by others, but by your Father who's in secret. And your Father who sees in secret will reward you." Jesus comes onto the scene and he tells us there is gain to be had. And it's connected to what Solomon was saying, that this is the gift of God. Like, you should be mindful of God whenever you're working. But he takes it even further to say, you shouldn't be doing anything for your own benefit. You should be doing all kinds of things for the benefit of other people, knowing that you have an ultimate benefit and believing that God will provide that benefit when your life is over. In verse 19, he just lays it out very clearly. "Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy, where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." You see, Jesus comes onto the scene and lets us know what Solomon was after. You want to know a mountain that's worth climbing? It's the mountain of righteousness, the mountain of faithfulness, the mountain of godliness, and genuine faith and sincere and pure hearts. That's the mountain that he says is worth climbing. And you spend your whole life climbing that mountain and enduring all the pain and the suffering and the trials. And whenever you get to the top of that mountain, you're not going to see the other side of the mountain. You're going to see something that's eternal, that you've always hoped for. And that's what Jesus comes and he shows to us. He also gives us a parable in Luke 12. You know the parable. The man who has a bumper crop, and he says, "What am I going to do? I got this wonderful crop. I know what I'll do. I'll build bigger barns, and I'll take my ease, and I'll just eat and drink and be merry." You see, it seems like in that case, he took Solomon's advice, right? He labored, and he's just going to sit back and enjoy the fruits of his labor. But he didn't. Because Solomon said, remember, this is God's gift. Later on in Ecclesiastes, we're going to see Solomon say, remember your Creator in the days of your youth. Fear God and keep His commandments. There's a recognition of Solomon and Jesus also that you ought to be thanking God and remembering that God is the one who has given you all of these blessings. And you'd have done better to be rich toward God instead of just seeking to gain as much as you can for yourself. Because he says, this very night your soul is required of you. Then whose things will these belong? Whose things will all these be? So Jesus comes in and explains to us that it's better to just be focused on going up that mountain and focused on that eternal reward where nothing can take that away. Because if you're focused on all these other little mountains that have all these things that can be taken away, they'll disappear. They're all temporary. They're never eternal. But there's one that is eternal, and that's what we should be seeking after. So what are you hoping to find joy in your life? What are you seeking after? What mountain is in front of you that you're giving all your effort to? How long will that joy last? Well, there's going to be joy in going up the mountain. But whenever we get up there, we're going to see it's the other side of the mountain. And then we got to decide, what are we going to do after that? Well, there's another mountain over here. We'll try that mountain. We need to understand fulfillment comes in the work of going up the mountain. Enjoy the work. Enjoy the fruits of your labor. That's fine. But remember the mountain that we're really climbing that has eternal glory waiting for all of us. And be sure that you're spending your time climbing that mountain. That's what Jesus is trying to tell us and help us understand in our walk in life. So if you're like me and you are constantly struggling with all these different opportunities and things like that, make sure you don't get distracted from what's most important and that you stay true to the path that God has given to you to pursue the eternal blessings that he has in store for all of those who call on Jesus as their Lord. And if you're here tonight and you're not doing that, we want you to understand that the future for you is not bright. The future is very dim. The eternal blessings are not for those who refuse to follow Jesus, who refuse to submit their will to his. It's not for those who will constantly be living for themselves and failing to be rich toward God, but it's for those who give their lives to him and submit their lives to him. And if there's anything that we can do tonight to help you to correct your path and to encourage you and build you up in your walk, will you please let us know? Please come as we stand and as we sing.